Okay, let's discuss shame and guilt, two emotions that are very distinct but really closely related, especially in pop culture. Now, in pop culture and pop psych and even professional psych, we have lots of people with really strong credentials who are very, very good at their jobs, who will communicate a message that says something to the effect of get rid of shame, right? Shame is not desirable. We don't like shame. It's bad, right? Um, Not inaccurate for certain audiences, somewhat inaccurate for this audience. So what I'm going to teach you is the basic fundamental neurological function of these two emotions as they relate to what you're trying to do to adapt to the environment. So in the beginning, in the first foundation video, I said that all of our 10 core emotions serve a purpose. And then somewhere else along the way, I said they're neither good nor bad. They're just informative. Okay, well, somewhere along the way, that stops being informative and people start having problems. If they're living in anger, if they're living in shame, if they're living in guilt, if they're living in fear or sadness, that becomes problematic because you can't live life, right? So it's no longer instructive and it becomes detrimental. And sometimes people see that and they're like, well, this is really unpleasant, therefore it must be negative or bad. It's not true. So we have to pull back a little bit. We have to turn on our thinking brains and analyze the root cause of the emotion that we feel. This is particularly true of shame and guilt. So shame's purpose is to tell us that we fail to meet somebody else's expectations. In other words, we cause sadness in another person. If you watch the sadness video, you know that it's when your expectations don't get met. Well, somebody had to cause that, unless it was just the earth. Then, I don't think the earth feels shame. Or your stove, if you turn it on, it doesn't work. It's like, well, that's a disappointment, right? You're going to feel sadness, but the stove isn't going to be like, I'm so sorry. Well, that's what shame does, is it tells us we failed to meet somebody's expectations. Guilt says go make it right. So like this, the stove would say, I'm sorry, if it were like an anthropomorphic stove that had feelings and could talk. Guilt would say, make an apology and then try to fix it. Okay. So that's the neurological function of shame. And I'll get into how this can get really derailed and sideways and cause problems in just a minute. But for now, I want to revisit a story that I told in the sadness video about getting up and walking out of a room and giving somebody a flat tire, meaning they step on the back of their shoe and have to pull it up or whatever. So in that instance, the expectation of not having your shoe stepped on was unconscious, meaning the person didn't know that they didn't expect their shoe to get stepped on until it got stepped on. What happens in that moment is they experience the disappointment of like, oh, that was messed up. That's uncomfortable. I, being the shoe stepper, I feel shame because I let them down. Okay, so I forget who the name was, Dave or Steve or something, both of whom are names that work for Zephyr. But that point aside, so the person turns around and goes, hey, Jake, you stepped on my shoe. I go, oh, man, I recognize that, right? I let him down. Guilt says, I'm sorry. Hopefully we're done there. And he goes, no big deal. It happens, whatever. But if that's not good enough for the shoe stepping recipient who was given the flat tire, I'm going to turn around and say, my ankle really hurts. Buy me a Coke. And I'll be like, all right, I guess. But you see where this is going. So I buy him the Coke and he goes, thanks. But boy, my ankle really still hurts. And by the way, you scuffed my brand new shoes. I think I need a pizza. Now I'm getting into a little bit of a slippery slope here where I could find myself on a shame guilt treadmill because I value his relationship. I want to make it right with him. Pause. New topic. Why do I want to make it right with him? Why do I feel this draw to perform or reconcile or otherwise connect? Turns out there's an evolutionary anthropological theory that suggests that the reason that we all evolved as Homo sapiens together was not just because of our limbic brains and our ability to read people's faces and validate emotions. It also has to do with shame and guilt. So think back when, if you can remember this far, 40,000 years ago, when we were all roaming the high plains of the African desert, we were roaming together in collective, in tribes, right? And so goes the theory. The reason some of the other hominids like Australopithecus and Neanderthal didn't survive was because they worked individually. They were smarter, they could create tools and whatnot, but they couldn't protect themselves against the environment, climate change, predator attacks, and so forth. We could because there were more Homo sapiens, which is our species, together in a group, and we were better equipped to deal with the elements. We need the group. I need Dave, Steve, whatever his name is. And I have a deeply wired evolutionary biological need to have him in my life for whatever his skill set is. So this is something we can't really unwire very well. An example might be if I was in that tribe in the African high desert or whatever, and the tribe says, hey, Betty, your job is to make baskets, and Tim, your job is to make tools, and Susie, your job is to make fire, and Jake, your job is to go hunt down meat. Okay, I have a job. I need to support the tribe with my meat gathering skills. I need to go hunt a gazelle with a spear or something. If I come back empty-handed, I have let down the tribe. I've caused disappointment, and they will communicate that to me, and I should say, oh, eesh, I feel bad. That's shame. I failed to meet their expectation of getting a gazelle or whatever. Guilt says, sorry guys, I really value my tribal membership because I won't survive without you out there by myself. I'll go find something, and maybe I'll go hunt down a rabbit or whatever for dinner. Okay? Super, super, super important. I need the tribe. The tribe needs me. We all need each other. We have a problem in today's American society, Western generally, and really globally. Anybody who has social media, anybody who's connected by the interwebs, who's familiar with comment sections and postings that incur vitriolic feedback, knows what I'm about to say, which is we're rapidly heading toward a shame-free society where you can firebomb people either with your own avatar or anonymously and not suffer this. Meaning you can continue to cause pain in the greater world and not make it right. One step further is we've got this narrative now that says you're not even allowed to hold people accountable because you're shaming them. Yeah, you are. It's necessary so that they can make it right. People need to be held to account for the pain that they cause. And when that doesn't happen, we get fragmentation of society. We get us versus them. We get polarization. We get labeling and boxing up and separating and siloing. And then we get contempt. And then we get more pain. And we get more sadness with no compunction, no reconciliation. This is very, very, very bad. And it is my personal soapbox. We need shame and guilt. So even though there's these super popular people out there in the community, in my community, who are very good at their jobs, and I love them to pieces, they're saying, don't shame people. The message is specific to a certain audience that's living in shame. Some people can get raised through whatever circumstances they have, and they'll receive a message, willful or unconsciously communicated, that says they're no good. And they grow up hearing this, learning it, believing it, repeating it, until they get to be young adults, teenagers, or full-grown adults who just don't have any self-efficacy, any self-worth. They don't believe they matter. That's living in shame. For those people, they need to hear the message, get rid of your shame, okay? That's really good messaging. It's not great for the broader society to generalize it and say, no one needs shame. Remember, these are deeply ingrained biological, necessary, physiological components. What's a physiological necessity? Going pee, right? We have to evacuate waste from our bodies. Otherwise, we become toxic and we die. We have to go pee. We also have to emote. And these 10 core emotions that Izzard studied are all equally necessary. We can't just shut them off. We can't just tell people don't feel that, or don't make people feel that by communicating your own pain. Like, what is that about? Like, hey man, you hurt me. Oh, don't say that. You might shame him. Yes, he needs to be shamed so that he can make an apology and we can be together. Otherwise, we just go apart from each other. Nobody ever reconciles anything, and now I resent him and he resents me, or he keeps getting to like flame me on the playground. Children do this all the time. They used to anyway. But that's another topic. So now we've got the playground is virtual, right? Used to be that if you wanted to mock somebody, you did it to their face, and there might be consequences to that, like getting popped in the snoot. Nowadays, we get to mock people online with no repercussions, apparently. And again, if we take it one step further, we're not even allowed to hold him accountable because, oh, you might shame him. Yes, he caused harm. We should shame him. But then, once we do the shaming, we communicate appropriately and accurately how they fail to meet expectations. We allow them to come through and apologize. We don't get to shame in perpetuity. That's how we end up with the adults who don't have any self-worth. I'm sure that you're watching this thinking of your own personal stories about, youth sports coaches, which can sometimes be horrifically damaging if you tell the kid he's no good and he's never going to be good because you think a 9-year-old should like play at the major league level or something. That happens all the time. That's terrible. Teachers do it. Parents do it. Step parents do it. Like this comes from everywhere, where we hold an impossible standard. We keep reminding people that they can't get there, but we keep reminding them of the standard that they'll never reach. That's the shame guilt treadmill that I described with Dave or Steve or whoever it is. Only it's on an organizational level. Big religion's really good at doing this too. Big religion will tell you you're a fallen human being handed over to sin from birth because of the original sin theory, and therefore you can't ever reconcile with God until you die and go to heaven or whatever. But keep trying. And you won't get there, but keep trying. And you won't get there, but keep trying. Shame guilt treadmill. And then pretty soon you're just doing things out of guilt. Like, I'm not good enough. I need to donate more. I need to serve more. I need to volunteer more. I need to go to more church. I need to say more Hail Marys, whatever it is. It's like, yeah, you're never going to be reconciled. That's a problem. We don't want people living in shame and guilt. We do want people analyzing with frontal lobe skills the purpose of the shame that they're feeling. That way they can put it into a couple of different piles. One, is it legitimate? Is it illegitimate? Illegitimate shame is something that somebody shoved into you because they were insecure, being mean, trying to put you down. Okay, there's no path to reconciliation there because they're probably not going to receive your apology anyway. Or they'll just put another impossible standard on you to meet. So that's illegitimate shame. Legitimate shame is where you can point to something and go, ooh, yeah, I screwed up. I need to go make it right. And then from there, hopefully forgiveness happens and grace and all that stuff. If not, then you have a decision to make. Do I buy Dave another slice of pizza? Do I buy him another Coke? Is the relationship worth it to me to continue down this treadmill? Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe you have another tribe that deserves your attention a little bit more because Dave or Steve isn't interested in letting you come out of your shame guilt hole that they've put you in. Emotional leveraging is very important. It's very necessary, and it also can be very toxic. It's up to us as the recipients of this to notice whether or not we find it valuable to stay in relation and in community with those people who are doing this to us, including domestic violence victims. So if you've been a victim of domestic violence, I'm not ever going to ask you to provide a path to reconciliation until the perpetrator has recognized that they've caused harm. Because some people just lobbing grenades and with no care in the world. They don't care where the fragmentation goes or who gets harmed. That's not what we're talking about here. You absolutely continue communicating, you're harming me, you're harming me, you're harming me. If they don't want to acknowledge that and make it right, leave. That's my straight up advice. That's toxic. It doesn't help. Leave. There's another community somewhere else that will be happy to welcome you that's not going to throw grenades at you. That goes for bullying. That goes for cyber warfare, all these things, right? If you're being harmed by somebody else's actions and they're refusing to acknowledge it and then make it right, go somewhere else. There's 330 million people in America and 8 billion on the planet. There's somebody else who's not going to treat you like that. So that's all to say this. Shame and guilt are necessary. We have to have these emotions, because if we don't emote, if we don't acknowledge them, we don't express, we will, like failing to go pee, explode. We will get sick. Failing to go pee can make the body physiologically sick. Failing to acknowledge the shame and guilt and work through it rationally and logically will make you sick. At bare minimum, you have lots of brain chemicals going into your skin and your cells at a cellular level. It will affect you negatively because you're carrying too much cortisol and adrenaline and so forth, that you end up becoming ill. We have to get it out, and we have to get it out in the right way. Don't shove it down. Don't pretend like it doesn't exist. And please, 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 for the love of God, don't try to turn it off. Just because somebody said, or you heard one time, the message of shame is bad, don't feel shame. Shame is good. Shame is useful if used sparingly and judiciously. Don't keep your kids in shame. Don't keep your spouses in shame. Accept their apology. Connect. Move forward. If you like this video, please subscribe, share it around. If you don't like this video, shame on me, because I should have done better, and I apologize. But seriously, give us your feedback. info@zephyrwellness.org, or comment in the comments section. And I invite you all to examine your emotions, feel them appropriately, logically work through them, and then find peace and happiness on the other side. In the meantime, from all of us at Zephyr Wellness, we wish you great mental wellness.